Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to the Ketodontist podcast. This is your host, Dr. Matt. So excited that you're here today. Today is episode 4, where we are going to be interviewing the superhero makers. That's Craig Priesendorf and Tara Garrison. They're a couple of fitness coaches and biohackers that utilize ketogenic diets as well as kind of the most effective ways of training, and they utilize fasting and all sorts of good stuff to get results not only for themselves but for their clients. And I was really interested with them because they have used keto for a while, and that's how I met them. And then started kind of learning about some supplementation that they do. And actually Craig just came out with his own supplement that I found kind of interesting, so I thought it'd be fun to get them on the show. Tara she joins towards the end of the show, and so we didn't get to ask some of the questions I had lined up as far as ketogenic diets, how that pertains, and training, how that pertains to women specifically, and advice on that front. We get into it a little bit, but we'll be getting her back on the show for her own segment to where we can really do a deep dive on that. So anyways, checking in real quick before we start the show. I'm sitting at 301, so I lost another 2 pounds. I am so close to breaking into the 200 mark again, so I wanted to check in for accountability. We do have a lot of travel coming up, and so that's going to be a real test. I learned from Kelly Starrett that anytime you're going to be sitting for long periods of time, he recommends compression socks. So I went to the friggin' diabetes, care part in the pharmacy at Walmart and got compression socks, and I feel like I'm in my 60s, but whatever. It's got compression socks. I've got tons of meal prep, so that way I have all my meals for the road. I just need to stop somewhere that I can warm them up in a microwave, or just eat them lukewarm if I need to. But yeah, so it's going to be a challenge, but I really want to chime in next time with you guys under the 300 mark. So here we go. All right, without further ado, here is episode 4 with the superhero makers, Craig and Tara. All right, welcome back, Ketodontist listeners. This is your host, Dr. Matt. Super excited today. We have a couple of very special guests, and you heard that right. You heard guests, plural. We have Craig Priesendorf and Tara Garrison, a.k.a. the Superhero Makers, 2 world-class fitness coaches that take special interest in ketogenic diets and biohacking techniques to not only build strong muscular physiques, but also to bring mental clarity and focus into the picture, and really ultimately live kick-butt lives.
Yeah.
Let's see. We're going to start off with Craig first. Tara is wrapping up with some coaching calls here. Craig, in his past life, was a U.S. Marine, an amateur bodybuilder. After serving, he started working with amputees and veterans as a fitness trainer. As time passed, he found his passion was performance nutrition for mixed martial artists, UFC fighters, and other athletes such as powerlifters. He educated himself through research, critical thinking, and attended numerous seminars with scientists, doctors, and other professionals, including the king of keto research, Dr. Jacob Wilson. He co-founded FitCon, a fitness conference and expo in his home state, in order to unify, educate, and inspire people to live their healthiest lives. Through FitCon, tens of thousands of people were educated and entertained by the same researchers and trainers that had helped him rethink nutrition and fitness. Best of all, people were able to sharpen their skills and unite with others through physical competitions. Craig continues to research, teach, and explore how he can help others live life to the fullest every day through optimal health. Lucid, his new supplement, is his life's work, but it's designed to make everything in your life work. As Craig says, hack the mind, unlock the body. Craig, welcome to the show, man.
What's up, Matthew? Thanks for having me, man. And us eventually. Tara's on her way down.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Um, so starting off, I gave that very humble and modest introduction there, but I really, with my guests, to start off with before we get into the nitty gritty, I really like to kind of do a deep dive into their personal story, what drove them to where they are now, kind of what makes us tick. So tell us a little bit about your story, what got you into fitness and nutrition science.
So starting back when I was like 8, 10 years old, I just looked at Flex magazines and I just wanted veins in my forearm. So, I mean, back then we were poor. We were living on like in the first part of Lehigh when there were still dirt roads and snakes. I mean, I remember we didn't even have a stoplight. And so at that point I had a 10-pound dumbbell and a chair. And so I had to do with what I could. And since that, grew. I got my first gym membership at like 12 or 13 years old, right in between there. The first movement I ever did was cable flies, and I was like, holy crap, I've never felt my chest like that before. And I was kind of hooked. I actually did, I think, Brad Schoenfield's Look Great Naked program, which is, I think, a 16-week program that he wrote forever ago. Very, very basic, starts with unilateral training and moves into compound movements, making sure, like, strength gains and balance is well implemented. Then I went in kind of like just trained myself. I played some soccer. I played golf my whole life ever since I was like 3 years old. And then never got into football, never got into anything like contact, no fighting, no nothing. But junior jazz, which is not high school basketball, and then like no football, just soccer on the JV. I was never really competitive at a high level, so I just never felt like the need to be competitive.
Yeah.
But then I went to the Marine Corps because I was thinking with my balls instead of with my head. And so during the Marine Corps, it was quite interesting. So a lot of us went in at really good shape, like myself. Like I was putting sub 18 minute 3 mile. I was doing, 38 to 50 pull-ups, and my crunches were really high in a matter of 2 minutes for the test. And so I had like a 300 plus, which 300 is perfect, but I had over 300 PFT score. Then I graduated, because when I got to boot camp, they're like, a lot of you came in great shape. A lot of you came in really bad shape. You guys are all going to leave somewhere in the middle. And I'm like, oh, great. And so sure enough, I actually gained 30 pounds of fat in boot camp. And my pull-ups were like, I think my final PFT test was 18, and I was struggling for 18 pull-ups.
Oh, wow.
My 3-mile run had gone up to like 25, 26 minutes. And my crunches, I mean, they were the same just because it's a technical advantage movement. But yeah. It made me really rethink why they thought fitness was that way, because at the same time they had a 300-pound dude who could do one pull-up in my platoon, and what they did is they pretty much just starved him and they smoked him. What's called smoking is when you pull him up to the front of the I want to say room that we're all staying in, the bunks. They just smoke him. So they'll just scream at him, yell at him, like do push-ups, jumping jacks, burpees over and over and over and over for like 15, 20, 30 minutes until the drill instructor gets tired for the most part. And so, like, that's all they did to that guy. And so at the end of boot camp, yeah, he lost 100 pounds, but he could do 2 pull-ups. And so I thought there was a major difference there, and there's a big problem with what they were doing.
Yeah.
Because if you lose 100 pounds, that's an automatic, like, 10 pull-up increase, you'd think.
You would think, yeah.
You're losing a whole human. And so, his PFT score was still crappy. His run didn't improve. His crunches were his crunches. But it made me rethink everything. And I was like, there's got to be a better way of doing this. So...
Yeah.
When I got out of the Marine Corps and the post-training after that, I was a reservist. I started kind of wondering around how I should get in a job, and I got certified from Larry Scott, who's like the first Mr. Olympia, and he was a 2-time way back in the day. I think 76 and 75 or something like that, maybe 78. But he was, a brilliant mentor. He worked with Vince Garanda, who was a very big proponent of the keto diet back then. Larry pretty much trained keto. I just did a post on my wall about what his macros looked like during a bulk and a lean out, because like back in his day, a bulk he was weighing 215, and on stage he was weighing 205.
Yeah.
So you're not seeing this drastic switch of like 20 to 80 pounds on stage, right? So a lot healthier. That was old school bodybuilding back in the day, was the pinnacle of health, because they were actually following a high fat, moderate protein, very low carb based diet. And the amount of carbs that they had available to them back in the day weren't the processed kind, weren't chock full of sodium and GMOs and everything you could think of. So in a sense, they really had their thumb on the blueprint very well. And I was lucky to have that as my first mentor. So I got certified under there. I moved into Gold's Gym and just started grinding. That's what I would call the grind, is where you're training clients every half an hour for 8 hours. So you have 16 clients in an 8-hour block, which is miserable. And then I went into sales. Is a little bit better, made a lot more money. But it was like car sales. You're just ripping people off. You're like, I'm promising them results, but I'm going to stick them with a trainer that I have zero confidence in, stuff like that. So again, like, I had to rethink things, and I finally, struck out to go independent. I started putting it out there and started getting clients. I actually moved away from bodybuilding and fitness, because what happened is, on my first show, I got put in the emergency room because I was following a coach's orders. He gave me way too many Diazide tablets. I ended up ending up 4 hours after the show in the ER with a blood potassium level 1.3. And like, if you ask any nurse or then, there's the lowest they've ever seen at Park City General. And then they said 2 hours more, you'd have been dead. There's nothing we could do because your heart would have stopped. And so I relapsed in the hospital, which was scary. But I mean, they obviously had me under control because I'm under constant surveillance. But, it's like you almost died twice. And so out of that moment, it's like, when Batman has his parents killed, or Superman has his planet destroyed and realizes it, what do? They become the bad guy or the superhero, right? So I decided to go the superhero route, create the superhero maker, which was just about the time the Avengers and Iron Man were getting really big. So I thought a golden moment was to jump on that. It worked. And I switched completely out of bodybuilding for the most part and moved right into my pure passion, which is MMA and martial arts. Because, like, back in the day, I was a part of an LDS community. Back in the day, I'm not anymore, but the Mormons is another word for them. My young men's leader, when I was 12 years old, he went against all rules, and he showed us UFC 1 through 7 at his house. And those were the brutal days where sumo wrestlers were getting kicked in the face and losing teeth on the first fight. So really cool. But at the same time, he's like, here's Hoist Gracie, 180 pounds. He's beating these guys like Ken Shamrock that are 225 and shredded. He's beating them. So it changed the paradigm. And so at that point, I was like, man, if I can maximize these guys, because I don't see another sport that reaches the pure maximum level that MMA will in terms of intensity, focus, concentration, because it's 15 to 25 minutes and literally anything can happen. You've seen, if you watched Anderson Silva and Chael Sonnen fights, classic example. Anderson was getting his ass kicked for 4 minutes and 55 seconds. And in the last 3 seconds, Anderson locks in this triangle, and you're like, I love this sport. So that's why I went into it, as a lot more high intense. And I'm a personality type that's very reward driven. And meaning that, I want to put it out there and share with people so people see the best in themselves. And that's rewarding to me. If I keep it all to myself and I just make personal improvements, that doesn't mean to me, in a sense, when it really comes down to it. Now, it's very important to walk the walk, and that's why I do it. But that's kind of led me in a nutshell to where I was here. I actually started same time when I had the ER incident. I did 2 shows after that, one with another coach, which went really well, and then one by myself, which actually placed top 10 on a national stage, and quit at that point. I got on the stage and realized I was just not part of this, and this wasn't meant for me, because it was all about ego. It's about getting up there, vanity. I'm not going to inspire anybody really getting on stage, other than another person who wants to get on stage, emaciate themselves, and make them really unhealthy. I mean, that's really what you're doing on that point. So, long intro. There you go. I hope you like that. But at the same time, that's kind of where I'm at, just maximizing the brain. And like I said, you hack the brain, the body follows.
Nice. So, well, speaking of that, biohacking is a pretty big buzzword right now.
It's dangerous.
Right. So, but tell me a little bit about your definition of biohacking, and tell me what you're doing to apply this to not only your lives, but also the folks that you coach.
Okay. So, interestingly enough, I've actually, since I switched to biohacking, it's been this point to where I need to learn a lot more. So I've actually stopped coaching. So if anybody does want to hit me up, I'm going to refer him to Luis Villasenor, who you've already had on this podcast. He'll be taking all my keto clients because he's probably the number one guy I trust on keto.
Understood.
And so he'll be taking those clients for anyone who wants to know. But at the same time, Biohacking is what I call, and Sean Wells is actually one of my business partners, and we've started a podcast as well about biohacking.
Right.
And it's all about taking whatever is out there of the highest quality, whether it's pharmaceuticals or natural products, or whether it's like different modalities for meditation or sleep, or it's, device trackers like the Whoop strap I'm wearing or the Aura ring or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's using all of that to extrapolate and correlate data in order to improve every aspect of your life. So it's your energy throughout the day. It's how you wake up, whether you wake up groggy or on point. It's how you sleep, how much REM you're getting, how much deep sleep, how much light sleep. It's using different light therapies like going outside shirtless with no sunglasses for 30 to 40 minutes to soak up as much vitamin D as possible, and C and E, obviously. So it's just really utilizing whatever is the best around you. And, a lot of people get lost in the natural versus synthetic. I used to be, I did go the all holistic, all natural route, and I just found it almost impossible to perform at a high level without using synthetic supplements.
Okay.
Like ketones, like Lucid, like, HMB and leucine, like protein powders. Like, it's semi-necessary if you want to see maximum output in any aspect. And so, like, using all of that to better yourself is the whole goal. That's what biohacking is to me.
Gotcha. So take me a little bit down that part of the journey. How did you really start getting into that? How did you really start learning the applications of natural versus synthetic and different methods, not only technologies but supplementation or through diet or exercise or whatever? What started you down that path, and what was the process of that?
I think I've always been down it since the emergency room aspect. I started following Charles Poliquin and Christian Thibodeau, who I'm coaching with. Like, he's my coach now. I just hired him recently. And like even guys like John Meadows and other guys that were really taking those things and putting them into action. And then you have Tim Ferriss and Dave Asprey and Ben Greenfield on the super nerd side. Yeah. So the difference, what I'm doing is combining real fast, high quality, minimum effective dose training from like Poliquin and Thibodeau to look like a superhero, but at the same time incorporating all the nerd science that we love so much. Because like we need to be part nerd, part athlete, right? That has to be how it is. And so pulling all of those methodologies in and then applying them and see which ones work ideally for myself is the goal. Because like the thing is, like, there's a lot of science backing a lot of stuff, but then there's a lot of science that's not even close to coming out yet. So in the real end of it, you need to make yourself your own experiment, period, in order to be able to find anything out. Because like I've also said in a few videos, like on studies, like you have outliers. You have somebody who doesn't respond at all, and you have somebody who responds better than everybody else times 3 or 4. Yeah. And they cut those 2 people out of the study. And they just take the mean average. And so at that point, you're like, okay, you could be an outlier at any one of those points. And so in order for you to know if it does it, you have to give it at least 6 to 12 weeks. And so like Tim Ferriss says, I live my experiment in 2-week experiments and 6-month projects. And I think that is pretty damn awesome in how to live your life in my perspective. And that seemed to what's helped in order for me to biohack. So on the whole biohacking side, I think every athlete or someone who's very conscious about their health is in a sense a biohacker. Mm-hmm. They just don't know it. And at the same time, if you are a physique athlete, like I shouldn't say physique athlete, if you're a physique competitor or like a bodybuilding competitor, bikini competitor, you don't give about biohacking. It's all about how good you look and how lean you are and how many photo shoots you can do every month. And at that point, you're an absolute opposite of a biohack because you're doing everything you can just for vanity and health, like looks, versus optimal health.
Yeah, optimal health, your cognition, just basically how you go about your day, how well you perform, not just physically but mentally, and how you feel while doing it. So.
Right, and like a lot of people, like they're going to be like, oh, it's all about hormones, it's all about calories. It's really not. It's about neurotransmitters. It's about the brain first. Because I've been all over the hormone map. I've researched and played with a lot of hormones as a bodybuilder. I was never one to just inject myself and not understand what I'm doing at the very finest detail. I always consult with my doctors and whatnot and be on prescriptions, but at the same time, like I've done the hormone route and that doesn't really work. But if you go after the brain, everything works because you can find out your neurotransmitter dominance and efficiency and eat and supplement to correlate and balance those out. So you end up having better decision making, better mood, better sleep, better everything.
Well, that makes sense though. Just going back to Anatomy 101, the heart is the engine of this whole thing, but the brain is the master control center. It's
right.
what runs everything that's going on in the human body. So
Yep. Yep. And the heart and brain work well together. So if you're maximizing that, you're maximizing the other.
Yeah. So very cool. Well, you know, since this show is Ketodontist, keto being pretty big right now, even though it's not necessarily new to folks like you and me, but it's pretty it's blowing up in in kind of a interesting way. Tell me a little bit about you know, you guys promote being in a state of nutritional ketosis for the most part.
Yep.
How did you first really learn about keto, and tell me a little bit about how you were learning it and then learn to apply it?
So there's been like a lot of talk about keto in the bodybuilding world. The first one I really looked at was carb backloading method by John Kiefer. Not necessarily for the insulin hypothesis, just more for the 2-week adaptation phase he had everyone go to. Yeah. And obviously he referenced Mario Di Pasquale. So I went back and read the anabolic diet as well. And I was always kind of fascinated about the 2 weeks and then what happened after the 2 weeks. Because Lyle McDonald wrote that it doesn't take for performance. It doesn't really work at all. You need to start doing your super high load carb days on, at least once every 2 weeks, which, I mean, depending on the person, I mean, that's probably not necessary or even close. And the carb protocol he laid out every 2 hours for 24 hours was, the only way you're going to follow it is if you are a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Because that's all you have to do in life is sit at home and eat and work out.
Yeah.
So there's no way you could possibly follow that kind of regimen.
It's not applicable to the average Joe,
Even bodybuilders, it's not really. Like only 1 or 2% of them even completed it.
That's true.
So outlining it so scientifically without actually having done it further yourself is a little ludicrous to me, but I digress. So at the same time, like John Kiefer followed the carb backloading route, which is so awesome. And I tried carb backloading. It didn't work for me. I actually got fatter. And it wasn't because I used the super fast foods that he kind of recommended, which he actually came back out later and says, don't do that.
Okay.
But like I was eating just carbs, just too many of them,
Yeah.
And I think his calculations were way too high for my metabolism. But I got stuck in that. And then I went into the Primal Blueprint and really started researching Mark Sisson stuff. And Charles Poliquin, again, I started researching brain supplementation and synthetic supplementation for Olympic athletes through him because he'd been doing it for 30, 40 years. And so at that point, like Alpha GPC is one of my favorite supplements that I give and take. And it upregulates acetylcholine and is a good source of choline. And it's phenomenal for focus, concentration, sleep, you name it. It's probably one of the most depleted neurotransmitters in our system is the choline, acetylcholine, and Tara's on her way down now. Sweet. But you gotta leave now.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, hello.
I am so sorry, but I have to go train a client right now.
Oh darn! All right. Well, Tara, if it's all right with you, let's get you on the show sometime.
Okay, that would be awesome.
I'd love to pick your brain, and I know a lot of my women listeners would really like to hear. So I got some questions for you lined up. So let's get you back on the show sometime, okay?
Okay, I would love that. I've got some other Wonder Women female ketogenic coaches too. Maybe we can get them on here with you. So
wonderful.
It'll be a good time.
Yeah, we could have like a ladies only night. That would be cool.
Yeah,
so.
girls' night.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
Hey, take care.
Hey, baby. Okay. Yeah. So getting into keto. Started doing the Primal Blueprint. He actually recommends 150 grams of carbs maximum for the highest end athlete. So, me being around 200 pounds, very high intense trainer in terms of twice a day training and being active all day, like I could handle 75 to 100 grams of carbs easily. So after dive into that, I started putting it into play. Like I usually don't dive into like researching anything unless I put it into play on myself immediately.
Yeah.
And so that's what I started doing. And I figured it just worked really, really well for my system. I actually don't like carbs. I don't like lean proteins, but I do love anything fatty that's good. Like before I knew about grass-fed meat and pasture-raised bacon, I hated bacon and beef. I could always eat it, but it would always cause major problems with my system. So I thought, I'm not that person that likes bacon, or I just don't like beef, one of the two. So I resorted to eating chicken breasts as a bodybuilder, So I was very limited, and what keto did was open my options to eat a lot tastier food, in my opinion. And it just started working with my brain better. So I stuck with it for 6 months straight. and just really didn't play with anything in the 6 months. I was like, I'm just going to get in all the way and stay there and see what happens. And then sure enough, like, you know, all the performance dips and stuff that people are talking about went away after 4 to 6 weeks. And I started getting more performance without being sore ever. I can do 2-3 workouts a day, and it's ridiculous.
False alarm. My 2 o'clock rescheduled, so I am good.
Hey, all right. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the interview, Tara. For
Thank you.
Our listeners and watchers, since this is video too, Tara Garrison has just joined us. Tara, just give you a little bit of background on Tara. Tara is a certified personal trainer and studied at the National Academy of Sports Medicine and is a certified functional strength coach. She's co-superhero maker, partner in justice, if you will. With
my best certification is superhero.
And so she has experience in both, functional strength, bodybuilding, but also endurance running and marathoning. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. So, all right, welcome, Tara. Glad you could join us.
So am I. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, Greg. So we were just talking about the keto really working with you and being able to enjoy fattier cuts of meats and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, and then being in there for 6 months, at that point, like once I figured it's gonna work, I get in search mode. So I'm like, okay, where can I take this, and what limits can I push on ketosis? And so, you know, everything that's going in my mind over what I know about the system and its systems is that there's probably a damn good chance that I could still eat carbs and stay in keto because I'm burning through so much glucose and my insulin sensitivity is so damn high after 6 months of keto.
Yeah.
So sure enough, like I put a couple videos out testing ketones, showing levels of me eating like 3 to 5 Ben and Jerry's in one day, like, you know, 10,000 calories almost in ice cream, and then testing the next morning and being at a 0.7, 0.8, 1.2, you know, it didn't matter.
Therapeutic levels. For my listeners who don't know, with testing ketones, therapeutic levels of ketones start about 0.5. So and then up. And so when he's talking about eating 10 Ben and Jerry's and testing the next day, even after all that sugar load, he's still in what's considered a therapeutic level of ketosis.
Right.
And that's not normal.
No. And I was training twice a day, and like you got to realize that like I trained twice a day, 4 to 5 days a week, and then Sunday would be that day. So I had all that depletion and all that kind of caloric deficit that I was able to add myself. And then I do believe adding, you know, having all those fats and Ben and Jerry's complementing the carbs really helped the ketone production stay intact. Because like, you know, I got a lot of people on YouTube who just like went off on me about there's no way you can eat 500 grams of carbs and stay in keto. I'm like, yeah, if it's by itself, you can't. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like if it's coupled with fat, I'm pretty sure you can because then it's a glucose and a fat response. Because like, yeah. So at that point,
well, it's just
you know,
it's just like they show, you know, with the glycemic index, adding quality fat sources lowers the glycemic index of those foods. So
exactly. Yeah. And so I figure that's what's really going on. And so since then, I've been 80 to 90% keto. Like since going full keto and working with Dr. Wilson and Ryan Lowry and Dominic D'Agostino and all these phenomenal experts that have the scientific side of things, I was able to run an MMA study through one of their really good colleagues, Jordan Joy, over at the Muscle Farm facility in Colorado, to where we took 2 MMA athletes, put them through an 8-week keto adaptation, and seeing what the results were compared to a standard American. And the performance results across the board were similar in terms of increases or decreases.
Really?
Except for the athletes on keto increased testosterone. They had better insulin sensitivity. The HbA1c test was better. And then fat loss went down and muscle went up versus the other group, not so much, because it was mostly conditioning and strength versus hypertrophy.
Right.
And so that kind of gave me the go-ahead to put all my fighters or any contact athlete in keto, because if performance is the same, which everyone's worried about dropping off of, performance is the same, then cognition-wise, you can't argue keto is better. So at the time, there's no point in not going keto if you're going to fight or, you know, be an NFL player or hockey player or soccer player, anything that's going to get concussed to the head or you really need to focus. Keto is the way to go. Now, I'm not debating the fat loss muscle gain thing. That's not what this is about. This is about biohacking in a sense, and keto is optimal for brain function, bar none.
Awesome. I almost wish I almost wish people would stop talking about the performance dip because it's so temporary and it's so minute. I mean, like I barely felt it. It was like, oh man, my bicep curls are a little harder today for like
Right.
a week.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like,
I
don't
love
worry
what you
about
guys
it.
are saying, and now this is something, this is something that we can go into the weeds a little bit on, but a lot of folks are concerned, and I hear this all the time in the ketogenic community and the paleo community and all that stuff, is they're concerned about performance in those what they call highly glycolytic sports. So your very high intensity sports. And then what Craig you're saying is, so for our listeners who don't know what the glycolytic sports are, those are the very kind of shorter but high intense sprint like sports. So your MMAs where you're going hard at it but only for like 3 minutes at a time, or say like you're rowing, like your crew. They have shorter races, but they're more sprints, or your Olympic sprinters. Those type of sports that are very what most people consider glycogen dependent. Right. And so, and what Craig is saying, that with his experience in that study, that might not necessarily be true. So, you guys riff on that a little bit. I'd like to hear more about that.
That's actually why I went at the MMA with the study, is because everyone talked about the glycolytic sports. And when I first released that MMA players don't need carbs, I was harangued by any expert out there that was carb based. And so all these nutritionists were jumping on my, I was like, well, you can't really refute the study that was done. And then if you ask any of the fighters that I coached, they're all going to tell you they feel 10 times better. Because like, that's the whole goal, is if I have an athlete that can use both glucose and ketones in the same setting, why wouldn't I? Versus keeping them to a carb-based state or a ketogenic state. So I'll obviously have a hybrid athlete at that point. So one, I have, if there's any, weirdness of high intensity and it needs glucose, it's there. But at the same time, since I need cognition out of these guys, which that's all that matters in the end. Because like in a 3 to 5 round fight where people are just breaking each other, you can't condition for that. There's no way you can possibly ever condition for that. And at that point, it's technique, heart, and who has better cognition. Who can still think while they're taking shots to the face and giving shots to the face at 28 minutes, right? That is the key, and that's why I went after it, because I knew the cognition would prevail over the glycolytic state, in a sense, and run into that. So that's what happened in the study, and it's still my opinion, because a lot of people will go ahead and refute that. But if any MMA fighter comes to me, any football player, any contact athlete, I'll put them straight into keto, and then we will start using carbs after they're keto adapted.
I have another example just recently. This one's anecdotal. It's actually Leslie Hoffhines. Is that how you say her last name?
Yeah.
So
she's one of my clients.
Craig coached her in ketosis, and she's been in and out of ketosis. But we just had a seminar this past Saturday, and she came and she messaged me and said, hey, can you guys please bring your ketone tester? I'm back in ketosis the last 3 weeks, and I want to see what my ketone levels are at. So I brought it, and I think she was at like a 2.3. I was like, holy cow, girl, that is awesome. Good job. And she said, I knew it because I was performing so well. Wow. All of her lifting. She said she's almost like back at her world record. She's a world record holding power lifter. And she's almost hitting those. I meant strong women. And she's hitting those levels after 3 weeks in ketosis. So. Wow.
Holy
in a glycolytic sport, right? So like with
quote unquote glycolytic,
yeah. With strongman being what it is, I mean, it is the highest intensity for 1 to 2 minutes in each category. And so you'd think a dude would need glycogen, or especially a female would need so much glycogen. But what happened with Leslie when I started coaching her back in the wild, she actually dropped a full weight class on keto, made the cut down to Mesquite without getting in a sauna, without doing much water cut, stayed at the weight class because all the inflammation was gone from her previous eating, and then she was able to perform her best, and then she actually went to the Arnold Classic, I think a year and a half later, and became one of the first pro strong women ever.
Wow.
And so that's what her story is in keto. And then I have a 19-year-old. At the time, he was 19 years old. He was a power lifter. And for sure, he can handle as many carbs as possible. But we put him into keto for a weight cut to get him under the 198 mark for his powerlifting. He has 7 world records in keto. So it's just this – I think it's the well-formulated and adapted keto lifestyle is what you're going for. Because like if you just do keto for 2 to 4 weeks, you're not going to see those improvements. But if you go 6, 12, 6 months, you're going to be performing optimally no matter what.
Well, that's just like, Mark Sisson talks about in Primal Endurance, his newer works and all that stuff. If you're wanting to compete, you're not necessarily going to want to change to this lower carbohydrate diet 3 weeks out from your competition. You want to start like a year out from your competition and go through that adaptation process. And so, because yes, you're going to go through this period where you're adapting to a whole new fuel source, and so of course you're going to have a period of less than optimal performance. But once that adaptation happens, from there out, sky's the limit.
And I think it's a trade-off for performance, right? Because at first you've been used to just performing with your body, but then you're giving your brain finally the full performance it needs, and it's going to take a second for your brain to get it. So at that point, once your brain has full performance, then your body will follow. And so that's kind of it's a trade-off. It's like you need to lack physically in order to get prepared mentally for a minute. And then switch back over. So either way, it's going to take some adjustment time.
Right. So, Craig, my alarm on my phone went off here. So, I got a question for you. I was going to say, I know you have a meeting that you need to go to, and if you're cool with staying for a little bit and we can jive for a little bit, that'd be great.
Be happy to.
Awesome. So, Craig, to kind of wrap up with you here, and I'd love to get you back on so we can do a little bit of a deeper dive on some of this stuff. We're talking about... We had mentioned energy, clarity, ketones in that, and we'd also mentioned your new formula of your supplement, Lucid. Talk to me a little bit about that. We can go into a deeper dive later on at another time, but tell me a little bit about Lucid. What made you start it? What made you be like, I have to create something out of scratch? Tell me about that.
One, I had created something out of scratch because I needed it for me. Like that was the biggest thing is like, I was always the dumb kid in high school. Granted, I wasn't interested or passionate about anything I was learning other than like video editing, which I did really good at, but like math, all that other stuff. I felt I was really slow all the time. So I started taking dozens and hundreds of nootropics in different combinations over the last 6 years, and finally wound up with version 1 that was a year ago last April. And it was finally the first time I didn't have to mix all the really bad tasting white powders by themselves and choke them down with a sweetener. So that's the first time. And just so happens that it all being blended together in a single bottle increased the potency and also increased the effects that I was getting cognition wise. So to just have that personally was a lifesaver, because like I have pictures back in the day where I had like 17 packets of different nootropics laid out, and it's just, scoop this, takes like 20 minutes just to make the shake. And so finally having that was the goal. And the whole thing I wanted to create was a non-caffeinated nootropic, because most of the nootropics have caffeine in there, which in my honest opinion, that's a cop-out for a nootropic.
So are you getting a placebo effect from the caffeine, not necessarily from the nootropics? That way.
Bingo. Yeah. Okay. Everyone's going to get a caffeine reaction. Doesn't matter who you are.
It's a trick.
That's why they put it in there. Like, you're guaranteed, I feel something. Yep, made me sharper. But at the same time, like, it's like Adderall. I was watching a Family Guy episode where he wrote this giant book and presented it to George R.R. Martin. And George R.R. Martin was like, did you write this whole thing on Adderall? He's like, yeah. He's all, Adderall doesn't make you a better writer. It just makes you put more shit on paper. And he had this like 12, 100-page novel of just crap. And so I think that's what caffeine is like, it's just going to turn you up. But at the same time, if it's still crap you have in your head, that's all that's going to come out.
Yeah.
And so
it's more quantity, but not quality.
Bingo. Yeah. And then we all know that's the worst way to go, because then you turn out like Walmart. But so
as a former caffeine addict, I can attest that is absolutely true. Doesn't matter what you're doing, as long as you're doing something.
Right.
Yes, in a nutshell. And so I created something, and I've actually learned this from Jeremy Horn, who's an MMA legend. He's got like 200 fights under his belt, 170 of them are recorded, but he used to fight for free in barns and whatnot when he was a pro. But this is back in the wild, wild west of MMA, right? And so like he told me, he's all, it doesn't matter how conditioned a fighter is or how technical a fighter is, if they gas because they're tensed up going in the cage, they're done. Like 2 minutes into the fight, they're done.
Yeah.
And I saw it happen to two of the fighters that I was coaching. One was Liam O'Neill, and that guy's just anxiety all the time, and he just goes psyched out. And if you didn't hit the dude with everything he has and he fell over, he'd freak out. And so giving him a supplement to calm him down, not put him in a sedative state, but just level things out, which that's what Lucid was designed for, is to create a calm, cool, collected environment. So like in the middle of war, the general freaking out is the general who's going to get everyone killed.
Right.
But if he's calm, cool, and collected, like, you know, if you watch 300, the only guy who didn't break
you have those folks who are just
Leonidas.
completely stoic and completely in the now.
Yeah.
That's the guy who's usually going to win. I mean, anything can happen in MMA, but, you know, giving my fighter 99% chance versus 80% chance is always going to be my goal. And I shouldn't say my fighter. I mean, they're my brothers after we've coached for so long.
Right.
So my brothers that are fighters.
Very cool. Very cool. So,
cool.
Like I said, Greg, I'd love to get you back on. Tell our listeners a little bit about what you're doing and how, if they want to learn more about you, where's the best place to go? How can we get folks in contact with you?
Yeah, so best way is on the Facebook page, The Superhero Makers, or at Instagram on @Superhero Makers. And then CC Supplement is my website for Lucid. And those are pretty much the basics. I'll do videos. I do Q&As. I'm not coaching right now, as we talked about, because I'm in learn mode. I hired a coach. Tara hired a coach. I'm taking a break from all clients for now, just because I just don't feel I have enough value to present yet in terms of a system to biohack, right? Because it's still gunslinging out there. It's like, what's a system that I can put into place that's going to help people out? But videos, everything like that, of kind of what I'm doing, updates, technology updates, anything biohacking that I'm coming across, I'm posting it online on the Superhero Makers, on my personal page, or on Instagram. Yep.
Yeah, and that's the thing about biohacking right now. Like you said, it's kind of the Wild West, and it's not being regulated at all. So there's a bunch of quality stuff, and there's a bunch of BS and misinformation stuff, and a lot of woo out there. And so you have to kind of distill through that, wade through some crap first, and then and find your golden nuggets of truth.
Yeah, it's kind of like most any industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. All right, Greg. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you getting on here with me. It was a blast. We'll do it again, okay?
Yeah, let's do it soon.
Awesome.
All right, see you, brother.
See ya.
Love what you're doing.
Thanks, man. All right, Tara. So,
yeah,
let's do this. So, you know, like I did with Craig earlier, with folks that I interview. I like to go into their expertise and their niche and everything, but first, I really like to learn more about that person and kind of do a deep dive into their story. So tell me, and my listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'd really like to learn your story and also, you know, what got you into this fitness and nutrition science and all that stuff. So let's do a little deep dive here.
Yeah. All right. I'm the perfect person for that because I'm like the most open. I'm probably overly open sometimes.
Right.
You know,
You're just like, am I being a little too
South,
transparent here? Yeah.
Yeah. I was taught you're not supposed to tell all your secrets, but I tell all my secrets. But basically, in a nutshell, I'm from Virginia, born and raised in Virginia, moved out to Utah for college. I was married to my ex-husband for 13 years, and I have 4 kids from that marriage. I got divorced last December and boom, met Craig right after. So we are actually a pretty new couple, but it's been lightning connection and the best thing that's happened in my life.
Awesome.
4 kids. So I'm very excited about that. And my fitness background. So I ran forever, right? Like I think I kind of went through the normal progression of what I would call like women's fitness, right? So like, okay, I'm gonna try running. So I did the running thing, and I've run marathons. I ran Boston this past April, and I think I'm probably retired from marathons now.
Okay.
But I did that for a long time, and I've gone from, you know, going to Zumba and fitness classes all the way to, you know, bodybuilding and functional training is what I'm doing now. And my interest in bodybuilding started about 3 years ago, so I'm still kind of a baby in fitness. And I got hooked really fast. There was a gym by my house that only had treadmills and weights, right?
Okay,
So I was like, I guess I'm going to learn how to use weights. And it became this huge fascination. And as anybody, I think, who gets into fitness realizes, it just snowballs because there's so much to learn and it never ends.
Yes.
And so it's really fun. So here I am, Craig. Obviously, I'm like every newbie trainer's dream, right?
Uh-huh.
I've got Craig by my side, who's very experienced in the field, and so I've had a little bit of a fast track being with him. And so right now I'm just immersed in learning and keto and biohacking and nutrition science and training. So here I am.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So what, before, because you've been running, you got interested in the bodybuilding aspect about 3 years ago, all that stuff. So tell me a little bit about what your thought process were, how you were training, how you were eating, your views on supplementation. What were they like, 3 or 4 years ago, and how has that evolved to where you're at now?
That's a great question. Okay, so when I first started lifting, and I'll use this as an example. I had just run the Ogden, Utah Marathon in April of 2015. I don't remember, May, something like that. Anyway, a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was overweight. I was eating healthy, like kind of by the typical American standard, like, oh yeah, I'll have a salad with my dinner, but I kind of ate whatever I wanted, right? And after 8 months of very dedicated lifting, I knew I had quite a bit of muscle I developed, and that's when I realized this is never going to work out. This is never going to show unless I get serious about my nutrition.
Right.
And so that's when I really started researching. I'm a copycat. My mom always told me that was my talent growing up, that I'm good at copying, which I always took that as such an insult growing up, right? But what I've noticed is that it's actually been a huge blessing in my life, because I follow patterns of successful people, right? I notice what they do. I want to know why. And I think a lot of us are like that. I want to know what...
To paraphrase a quote from Steve Jobs, he, this isn't the exact quote, but he said, go out and learn what the best tactics or the best thought processes from the best people and who you admire, and then and then cherry pick the best of the best and bring them back and implement them in your life or your business. And so I don't think being a quote-unquote copycat's necessarily a bad thing at all.
Right, yeah. So that's what I did. I just started copying people like crazy. And lucky for us, we live in this age of social media where, if you can follow a few people that you really respect who are really honest and open about how they live, you can pick up on those habits to be successful. So that's exactly what I did. And that's why on my social media accounts, especially on my Instagram account, I'm really open about how I live, because I know other people are in the place that I was in just a few years ago. And they're like, I just want to know like what a day looks like for you,
Right.
So basically nutrition, even before keto, I was pretty close to keto.
Okay.
I picked up on low carb really fast, and that's when I lost weight.
Gotcha.
But like I said, I wasn't doing high fat. And so if you know anything about nutrition, if you don't have carbs or fat, you have no energy source, right? So I was heavily dependent on caffeinated drinks, right? And so then when I found keto, it was like the missing piece to the puzzle. I was like, cool, I can use fat for energy, I can stay low carb, and now I don't need caffeinated drinks anymore because I'm getting my fat from my energy from ketones.
And also, with men, it seems to be a little bit easier to do the no carb and low fat thing versus my experience with women, and correct me if I'm wrong or correct me if your experience has been different. But women seem to need a little bit extra when doing low carb. They're going to need a little bit extra fat fuel source in their diet to help with correct hormone and hormonal responses and estrogenic responses and pathways. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I know at first, I think this is the challenge. It was for me and for a lot of my clients, not all of them, but all of my clients are females. And they struggle with that calorie count of the high fat,
Right.
right? You know, it's like, oh, I'm not going to eat 50 grams of fat.
Yeah.
You know, that's a ton of calories, you know? And so they don't get there at first. I think that's the biggest struggle. But I noticed once I finally humbled myself and I was like, if I have to gain a little weight while I get my health on track, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I actually really feel like a different person now. So I do know that my hormones were affected by the way I was eating before. And I honestly, if I had stayed on that track, like my adrenals would have been wrecked.
Yeah.
I mean, they already kind of are from that. And so, yeah, women really, really need to focus, especially in the beginning of ketosis, on getting enough fat.
And quality fat, yeah.
Quality fat. Set everything else aside for a while and just get into ketosis.
Right. And see, and that's the thing, you know, when I work with my clients, I'm a dentist by day, and so that's what my shtick is. That's how I earn a living. Really, my coaching side gig is just very much, it's just my passionate hobby. I mean, you know what I mean? And so
Absolutely.
it's not my bread and butter. But I tell folks going in, when we're first starting out, especially if they have a whole lot going on, you're not going to be able to focus on losing 100 pounds, plus fixing your hormonal and adrenal issues, plus being an all-star CrossFitter and winning the next, games at your local box. Like, we're not going to be able to do all three right off the bat. So let's focus on fixing what's broken first, and then go from there. Would you kind of agree with that approach? Like,
I do agree, but at the same time, I think that those little choices that you're making every day, like, you're going high fat, but you can still go kill it in the gym that day. And actually
absolutely, yeah.
Recommend it, right? But yeah, I don't think anybody. I don't think a lot of champions or people who you see maybe successful in, let's just say, in fitness, I don't think they go out being like, I'm going to be the fittest person on earth. I know I wasn't ever trying to be like, you know what I mean? I didn't have that goal in mind. It was just daily, every day. Today I'm going to make a good choice. Tomorrow I'm going to make a choice. Okay, I'm going to try a little harder, and the next day I'm going to try a little harder. So yeah, just like take it easy in the beginning.
And
I would say
I think that's the right approach to do it, the day by day, because you don't want to be in a scarcity or negative mindset that I can't do these things. However, starting out, that's not where you need to be the focus. Your focus needs to be in the old, kind of martial arts, Aikido way of looking at thing of chop wood, carry water. Do these things every day, and build that habit, build that regimen, and then, but over time, you will indeed adapt, and you'll get stronger, and you'll get,
Yeah, because every change that you make in your life is a stress.
Yeah.
On your body. And so if you're trying to make all the changes all at once, you're going to fail, because it's just too much stress at once. So once one thing becomes easy, eating keto becomes easy, it's not really a stress in your life anymore. And so then you can create a new stress, whereas like turning up your training or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, wonderful. So what have you found? You were low carb before, and then you kind of got turned it up a notch with this ketogenic style of living. What has been the big noticeable difference and the advantages of adapting this ketogenic lifestyle for you versus before?
The energy, for sure. I mean, I went cold turkey off of, we're talking, I was probably about at least three monsters or rock stars a day, and then probably like 2 of the biggest cups they had at the gas station of like Coke Zero or Diet Mountain Dew. I mean, it was really bad. It was like I was living off of it, right? And I went from that level of caffeine and sodas, I mean, like my poor gut and everything, to nothing, cold turkey with keto. And I will say I did have lucid and ketones, and that helped a lot. Yeah. Because a lot of it was just like habit of, I want something sweet and yummy to drink. Yeah. There was that aspect too. So yeah, I mean, energy levels, for the first time in my life, like everybody in keto, I experienced, wow, there's no afternoon dip.
Right.
Like I'm just good all day.
Yeah.
So I would say that was the biggest quality of life improvement. And then also just feeling more like my best self hormonally, if that makes sense. Stress levels down, cortisol's down, I feel a lot more like just Tara.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you're more you and not
yes.
necessarily like reactionary to things.
Right, because the stress levels are, it's way down. So
yeah, I have a similar experience when with my thing. I've known about ketogenic diets for a while. I mean, I lost 15 years ago. I lost 100 pounds doing a ketogenic and low carb approach, and then life happened and stress got a hold of me and all that stuff. In the last few years, even though I've known about low carb and ketogenic, my life wasn't in order, and so I'm just constantly stressed and depressed and all that stuff. And it wasn't until I got that right that the rest of this started falling into place, and I've started making, my gains, or on the scale my losses, but you know what I mean. Like, it wasn't until I took care of that part first that I would have even had a chance on focusing on losing weight and getting stronger in the gym and being a better boss at work, being a better doctor, all that stuff.
Absolutely. It's like the principle of the masks on the airplane, right? You got to start
Yeah, you
start
got to put
with
your
first.
oxygen mask on first. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, and it's also kind of like, maybe you've seen that little video that floats around Facebook about making your bed first thing in the morning. It's like some military guy. I think we've all seen that. And it's like, it's your first win for the day.
Right.
So once you make your bed, you're like, cool, I'm accomplished. I'm like on a roll. I'm doing something good. Same thing with nutrition. Once you can get that nailed down, you're like, you know what? I kind of got my act together. I'm pretty proud of myself. I'm a good person. I wonder what else I can do well. So,
yeah. So,
yeah, it's very empowering.
So with, we talked about your changes in nutrition. Tell me a little bit about, since, meeting Greg and bringing on this this style of not only the ketogenic eating and the lifestyle program, but also the training aspect compared to what you were doing before, running, Zumba, probably the Pylo Pilates, like
that was a while ago.
What you considered,
that was pretty far removed from before I met Craig. But when I met Craig, though, I was I was probably working out for like an hour in the morning and then like 2 hours at night.
Wow,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
I was just like, I don't feel like my lifestyle was efficient. Now, I'm not opposed to working out twice a day, and I still do sometimes. I'll do like a quick cardio session in the morning and then go lift later, just depending on like what my time looks like that day.
Yeah, and how you're
Obviously,
feeling
I do
and
that
all
every
that.
day.
Yeah.
But I feel like with keto, something happens and your life becomes very efficient. And so my training not only has because I'm only eating twice a day, so it frees up a lot of time. And then my training, obviously, I mean, Craig has been in this for a long time, so I've learned some of his methodologies, which have been awesome. And so I'm learning how to go really high intensity for a short amount of time and get it done.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do keto, that's the best way to work. Actually, keto or not, that is hands down the best way to work out. Like, intensity wins every time. You can go run a mile as slow as you can and then go run a mile fast as you can. And you tell me which one is better. You know, it's like, it's intuitive.
Yeah.
You know that your body is getting more out of it when you go higher intensity.
Yeah.
And it's faster, so it's more efficient.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing when I teach folks, is that you can get, everybody complains about, they work too much and they're too busy with lives and all that stuff. You can get for strength training, you can get a killer workout in 20 or 30 minutes and be toast.
Can.
For a cardio,
as long as you're not sitting on your phone,
right? Or for a cardio workout, do a Tabata set. Do something very high intensity. A true Tabata is 4 minutes. Do something for 4 minutes consisting of nothing but burpees and kettlebell swings or something like that, and after 4 minutes you're toast.
Right, exactly. And that metabolic effect that it has in your body with your body's just guessing after the workout, that post exercise, if they call it excess post, oh my gosh, epoch. Sorry, my mind is like, guys.
That's all right.
Anyway, the oxygen consumption after doing a high intensity workout
Yeah.
like that, your body's guessing,
Yeah.
right? So your body's like, what are we doing here today? So yeah, that's really honestly was what one of the keys to my success was, not only improving my marathon times from going from, I couldn't get past, I had 3 marathons that I ran about a 340, 342 right in there. And then I started incorporating what you're talking about, those intensity intervals
Yeah.
into my runs. And so my runs were like 20 minutes a day, but speed work constantly. And then my next marathon was a 317 and I qualified for Boston.
Wow, that's awesome. That is
Yeah.
so cool. So, now that you're transitioning out of the marathoning, is that first off, is that mainly because of kind of the time and the stress that it puts on your body? But then second, a lot of folks think with this whole, because since you've had experience in bodybuilding and marathoning, that you can't necessarily do both, but your last one shows that you can, like, you might not, be a world champion marathoner, but you can do the act of marathoning while still having a toned, lean, kind of built physique. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great question, because that's actually what got me into the entire fitness scene right there, what you just asked about, because I realized that, I was basically following bodybuilders, not women, men.
Yeah.
Like I was just following like the most typical bodybuilding strategies possible. I was trying to gain muscle, and I set a 26-minute PR on my marathon time. And so I started my Instagram account, which is Lift and Run, just to share that message. Like, hey, I'm just like a nobody mom out here, but I think I'm onto something, because when you lift, and you lift hard and really consistently, and you lift more than you run, it makes you so much faster, right? And so that's how I got my start. And so yes, I absolutely believe that you can lift to a bodybuilding level and also run. Part of it may depend on your genetics, right? And a lot of it was, I had, years of experience in running, so that gave me a bit of an edge. But I will also add that running will increase your gains in the gym with lifting as well. Because for me to be able to feel fatigue during a lifting session, it was almost non-existent.
I see.
Because my conditioning was so high. I could go, that's why I could go forever and intense and heavy, and it didn't wear me out. So they work together beautifully, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Tara, we're, for the episode as a whole, we're approaching the hour mark. I would love to get you back on as well. We agreed with Craig that we get him back on, but I'd love to get you back on as well, especially if, like you said, you have some of your clients that would love to jump on here, and because I have a lot of women listeners that have questions, especially on keto and how it relates to women specifically. And so I'd love, if we could get you back on
Absolutely.
sometime. That'd be
great. I would love to. Yeah. So
I want to wrap up with a final question. We talked about, and this is probably more selfish reasons that I'm asking this, but we talked about you being a caffeine addict, and I'm in middle of recovery myself, and so I would so can we talk about that just a little bit, about what information did you find that opened your eyes to be like, okay, I've got to change this way that I'm doing it. And you said you quit, cold turkey. You did supplement a little bit with lucid and exogenous ketones and that type of stuff that I'm sure helped as a buffer. But what was it about that you learned that was finally the trigger of, okay, I just need to stop this? And what has that transition been like?
Okay, sorry, I lost you for a second, but basically you were asking me transitioning from caffeine to where I am now.
Yeah. So what did you learn that really made you pull the trigger on that? And what has that transition been like?
Being totally honest, at first, it was mostly like a challenge from Craig. He was like, that stuff is bad for you. Like, you got to get off it. And so I was like, ugh, right? So sometimes you need like that person in your life that cares about you to be like,
yeah, you need that push.
Yeah, you need that push. So that helped at first. But when you don't understand the principles or the why of something and you're just doing it because somebody else wants you to, it's not motivating enough. And so I was like,
motivation can be very fleeting.
So I was like, I think today I'm going to have a Monster. I think today I'm going to have a Coke Zero. I just feel like it, right? So it started creeping back in. And that, what Craig, being the excellent coach that he is, was like, okay, let's get you educated from somebody else besides me, right? And so he turned me over to, it was a video from part of a presentation from Christian Thibodeau, who actually Craig and I just hired to be our coach, and he is amazing. That's why I was late for the podcast, and I apologize, but I was going long in my first phone call with him. And he has a great presentation. I can send you the link, and you can put it in the podcast notes if you'd like, about
absolutely. Love
what caffeine does to you and why you don't want to be taking it pre-workout or ever. So it does have a very big effect on your adrenals, and it's honestly something that I think anybody who has a caffeine addiction needs to get educated on. So I'll send that over to you, and then they can go down the rabbit hole if they want.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, very cool. And so with you yourself, what was the transition been like as far as during the process? How long did it take for you to finally get to that point that you really you could look at a coffee or a Red Bull or a Coke Zero or something and not even just look at it and it wasn't had any effect on you whatsoever? Like, you look at it and
okay, I will say I still drink coffee. Craig says coffee's okay, and because it has other health benefits
and I
in it, right?
And
so I do.
Yeah, there's a lot of other benefits.
Yeah, I do still do coffee.
That,
but
just like me with my iced tea right now, my black tea. It's not necessarily for the caffeine, It's But sorry,
that's what it is too. Is a
ahead.
lot of it really was just like I just wanted something sweet. I just wanted like a sweet drink because that was a habit that I had built, and so I started replacing it with like Powerade Zeros and Vitamin Water Zeros, and I still have those sometimes, even though I know they're not optimal. I'm human. I still have those sometimes. But I did notice that if I did water with some lime or lemon juice in it, it totally took the edge off. Most of the time, I was just thirsty. I just needed water. So if I drank some water first, then I was like, never mind. I don't need a Monster. I'm thirsty and I'm used to drinking that, So it's just changing those habits.
Gotcha. So it's more of a habitual response than anything.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And did you, like, when you first cut out, did you feel just like utter crap for a few days, or was it really like, oh, this is a lot easier than I expected?
It was a lot easier than I expected, but I think that was because I had lucid and ketones. So that kind of kept my neurotransmitters in my brain in an optimal place that I wasn't craving. So
gotcha. Well, very cool. Well, I got to get going since we are over an hour mark here, and so it was so. I'm so glad you were able to get on here, and I look forward to getting you both back on here in the future. Let me wrap up with my listeners here. Thank you so much again, Ketodontist listeners, for another great episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. Remember, we're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, we're on Google Play, we're on YouTube, all that good stuff. So you know where to find us. If you like us, please subscribe, rate us, leave a review. We love you forever. And until I see you next, take care.